Welcome back, you beautiful people, to another episode of Here's the Camelot with Tito. Today, I want to address what I've come to find as an issue with the previous video, and that was my Summon Stone farming guide. Basically, the principle still applies. Blighted Rhiannon, City 4 Titan is an excellent boss to farm. However, in light of the last Summon Storm, and I should say the problems that are brought about, there was brought about another conversation about how people acquire their stones, how they farm them, and what is the most cost efficient and effective way for new and newer players, especially new and newer players, to get those stones. I started the last storm, I think, with 7,500 summon stones, and I got most of that, all of that actually, from farming Blighted Rhiannon in City 4. But there is another way that I found is actually better than to do Blighted Rhiannon, and I'll explain that in a minute. I want to first start with a disclaimer, though. I am fairly certain that GIEA uses a randomized loot system called the Gotcha system. I ran into this system in another game I played, which was Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and the best explanation I got about how this works, how the system works, is basically the more effort you put into getting something, the more likely you are to get it. It increases your chance exponentially to some extent every time you try and you don't get it. Now, basically what that means in mobile game terms is the more money you spend, the more likely you are to get what you want. We all know this to be true. It's just how they draw us in. But if you're farming summon stones, that doesn't necessarily mean it means money. It just means that the more you try to farm a boss and you don't get it, then the more likely you are to get it. It also means that the odds, that statistical probability, mean anything in talking about drop rates for these wandering bosses is very likely completely thrown out the window. It might not even matter. But what I did was, I had been saying and telling people, hey, I farm my stones on City 4. I'm farming Blighted Rhiannon, and that's where I get them. And that's what I tell people to do. And a lot of people say, well, why don't you farm Krampus? And I was like, well, because I just didn't feel like it really had that great of a drop chance. I had always done Blighted Rhiannon, so I was like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. So I decided what to do was I was gonna farm up Blighted Rhiannon and Krampus. I was going to farm until I had 100 encounters, so I could create the most basic statistical model that I could, which was how many card drops out of 100 fights. So what I found is, I'll start with Rhiannon. What I found with Rhiannon was that out of 100 fights, I got 6 cards. There's a 6% drop chance rate that I had when I did this. It took a while. It took almost 3 hours to do this. But the biggest thing was the cost. It cost me 40 stamina pots and 22 mana pots. Now, the thing with Rhiannon is it's a level 50 wandering boss, so it requires a stronger team to take down at the higher levels. As you saw in my first video, the most efficient team that I had to farm Blighted Rhiannon was a team that cost 80 mana. So I'm not able to do as many fights per mana pot. So that's something to take into account, when you're farming Blighted Rhiannon, is that it's going to cost you a lot more pots. Now, there was a 10% mana pot drop rate from the boss, so I was able to mitigate. I spent 22 pots, I got 10 pots back. So, I halved my mana pot expenditure, but spending 40 mana pots to get 6 cards, that's really expensive. Now, I will say this. The reason people say Blighted Rhiannon is good is because of 2 things. Yes, you get summon stones for, getting the cards and sacrificing them. However, there's something interesting and unique about City 4, Titan Zone 18, is that is, at least to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, that is the best place to farm experience for your character. You get more experience in that area, that zone, than you do anywhere else. And obviously, the higher GK level you have, the greater XP bonus you're going to get when you're farming. So people farm Blighted Rhiannon for 2 reasons. Yes, you get stones, You might not get as much as you get Krampus, but you could level up a lot faster. So that's something that I didn't really explain very well in the first video. Now, I want to talk about Krampus here. Krampus, I did 100 fights. It took a lot less time. It took about an hour and a half, but there I found it was an 11% drop rate. I got 11 cards in an hour and a half. Now, the most significant part was I only spent 11 stamina pots and 11 mana pots. Now, compare that to Blighted Rhiannon, where I spent 40 mana pots and 40 stamina pots and 22 mana pots. So you're spending half as much, and in some cases, almost a quarter of as many pots as you would if you were farming Blighted Rhiannon. Now, the other thing is that, for one, it costs a lot less to walk. That's what we call it. And doing the questing in these zones as you're walking through it. It costs 2 stamina for every time you walk in City 1, as opposed to the 6 stamina it requires to farm Blighted Rhiannon in Titangale. Now, Krampus is the boss. Krampus is the card that drops from the Wandering Boss in City 1 on normal mode. The Wandering Boss is the Black Knight who maxes out at level 30, and it drops the Krampus card. Now, that's the interesting part, is that Black Knight, as you can see, maxes out at level 30. That means you don't have to have a very strong team to take him out. As you see here, I'm farming Black Knight with a max tier 4 Maelgwn Pendragon, who only costs 27 mana. Now, that's a third of as much mana that I'm expending in farming Krampus each time, as opposed to farming Blighted Rhiannon. So right there, that's where it really cut down on the costs, and the fact that it doesn't cost a lot of stamina to quest here also means that it's cutting down on your required amount of stamina pots that you need. There is a 12% mana pot drop from the boss, from the Black Knight. So that means that I spent 11 pots, I got 12 back out of 100 fights, and so it cost me absolutely no mana pots whatsoever to farm this boss. It did, however, cost only 11 pots. So if you're a new player and you don't have a lot of pots yet, you haven't had a chest of chests, you aren't able to really farm the pots and ticks arenas and get those and build up an accumulation of pots, then this is the absolute best and most effective way, because you don't have to have a strong team to beat the Black Knight, and you're not going to really be expending a lot of mana and stamina pots to get those cards, especially with the 11% drop rate. So I would say, if anyone were to ask me now, City 1, Avalon, and farming Krampus from the Black Knight is the absolute best place for any new player to farm Summon Stones. That's it. Straight up simple. However, if you are a higher echelon, higher tier player, and you don't, Summon Stones, they're nice, but you're not going to get anything super nice out of those Summon Storms, then maybe consider farming Blighted Rhiannon for that extra XP boost, which is fantastic if you want to level up quickly. Something else, one last thing I will say as I'm getting ready to wrap up this video, is that something I had postulated earlier. I said this because this is what I felt to be true. I had no idea for it. I guessed. Was that wandering bosses reset their levels at once a month. That is actually, it resets every 3 or 5 days that you don't fight them. So if you are fighting, Black Knight, or you're fighting Blighted Rhiannon, and you're getting to a point where they're at a high enough level that you can't kill them very efficiently or effectively, just give it a couple days. Wait 3 or 4, 5 days, come back, and they will be reset to level 1. So that is something I didn't know, and I'm definitely going to have to keep in mind for later, so I tell people when they ask me the right thing. But that's basically it. I want to say one last thing here. I also have a lot of people asking me when they're getting ready to sacrifice and everything like that, do I need to level up these cards or anything like that? Is there anything I need to do? And I'm going to say no, absolutely not. As you can see here, I go to my vault, I sort out my 7 stars, I'm going to go down. I'm going to get those 4 Krampuses that I have. I'm going to pull them out of my vault. I'm going to go over to upgrade. I'm going to hit evolve, and then I'm going to sort, get my 7 stars laid out, and then I'm going to evolve these Krampuses. As you see, they're all exactly how I got them, base level 1, no enhancements, no awakenings, absolutely nothing. I'm just going to combine all 4 of these together to make a tier 4 4-carded Krampus. And that is all you have to do. There's nothing fancy about it at all. So as you see here, I have the 4-carded tier 4 Krampus. I'm going to go down to sacrifice, and I'm just going to drag it over. As you see, I'm on cooldown, so I can't get it. But this is this is the exact process that you have to do to get your summon stones. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope I've been able to clear up the misunderstandings. And if you are a new or newer player, definitely consider the Krampus farm. So I hope to see you out there on the plains of Avalon, and I'll see you in the next episode.